What's up, everybody? You've tuned in to Just Drawz, the podcast that explores hot topics and various experiences among same-gender loving Black men. In each episode, we offer raw, vulnerable, and stripped-down perspectives to give voice to our frequently overlooked population. Here, we don't just scratch the surface, we dive deep, peeling back the layers of our experiences as well as heteronormative stereotypes. Let's get into this week's episode. What's up, everybody? This is Darius, one half of the Just Drawz podcast. I'm back again with an intimate edition of Just Thoughts. So hopefully you all listened to my previous thoughts about airline travel and higher education, both of which are in season 2. So if you didn't listen to those, for real, y'all need to go back and check them out. So for this Just Thoughts, I wanted to be even more vulnerable with you. So I decided to go even closer to home on this one. So here are my Just Thoughts on family, blood versus chosen. So in the LGBTQ plus community, for those of you that don't know, we tend to use the term chosen family. Okay, so I'm not really sure I knew what that was until I fully embraced the community back around 2015. So blood family, though, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's people who share your DNA. My blood family are the people who raised me, who chastised me, and, for better or for worse, had conditional or unconditional love for me. But chosen family, those are the people that I align myself with. Those who shared my thoughts or share my thoughts, my fears, my dreams, my hopes, my triumphs, and even my failures. Basically, my Wi-Fi connection is a little bit stronger with them. But before that, I thought chosen family was just a nice way of saying, you know what, I'm tired of my biological family being in my business, so I'm gonna just go find some new people. And listen, I'm not saying that my blood family doesn't also share those things, my fears and dreams and hopes and all of that stuff. But let's be real. Sometimes unconditional love can come with a side of unsolicited advice and a healthy dose of shit like, so when you get married, I can't explain it. It just hits different. Those definitions of blood family and chosen family really resonate with me because growing up, friendship was very, very important to me. Family has always been important, and it still is, but, I never felt like I had to work as hard to maintain familiar relationships as I had to with my friends. So to take you back, when I was young, I was the dark-skinned, chubby kid who rocked Sears Toughskins jeans in size husky, all right? But I'll tell you, though, those jeans could survive anything. Zombie apocalypse, this current administration, all of that. But my self-esteem those jeans really couldn't survive that, not so much. So I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be the guy invited to every party, the one who got at least 2 Valentines in my class party bag. So for those of you who grew up in the 80s, or those of you who grew up around having the Valentine's Day parties in your class and stuff like that, you would go to the store and buy the box of Valentines. It came with 25 Valentines. You maybe had 18 people in your class. So some people got a chance to get 2, so the good friends or the ones you liked are the people who normally would get 2 Valentines in their bag as we were eating cupcakes and candy and chips and everything else at the party. But spoiler alert, getting back to the story, I wasn't the guy that was invited to all the parties, and I didn't normally get 2 Valentines in my Valentine's bag. Maybe one extra one from my best friend if we were in the same class or something like that. But as I got older, I became more C-list popular. So people knew me. It was like, oh yeah, that's Big D. He's funny. He's smart. Oh, and he's in the band. But when it came to love, let's just say I got more rejection letters than a spam folder. I became desensitized to the fact that I was rejected so much because of my appearance. I was much bigger than I am now. And it was okay. At the end of the day, I was decently happy. So it was what it was. But I realized the importance of chosen family when I got to college. I was thrust into an environment where I wasn't really around much family. And while it was scary, it was something, honestly, that I embraced. As I mentioned earlier, I was the chubby, dark-skinned kid who was more of an introvert. I mean, I still am in my day-to-day, but I do know now how to navigate in extroverted spaces more fluidly. I thank God for growth on that. But my family always knew me to be the quiet, smart, kind of goody two-shoes that never got into trouble, always knew what to do, but the one that was pretty easy to manipulate. And when I say manipulate, things like, you could tell me to do certain things. And a lot of times I would do it because I was looking for that acceptance and I was looking for that popularity that I kind of talked about a little bit earlier. So they accepted me as that. My mother used to tell people all the time that I was her blessed child because I could read it too. I was artistic. I could process information pretty easily, et cetera, et cetera. But having all of those characteristics and really beautiful qualities did make me feel like a bit of an outsider. I didn't have people, at least in my household or immediate family, whom I could identify with. While my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother were smart in their own rights, I couldn't share with them like some of my more complex thoughts that I had about life. How sometimes I felt like I was being helicoptered every time I went outside. And questions like why my father really wasn't around. You get the one side of the story, but like, why was he really not around? What was that about? So I spent a lot of time to myself. I created an imaginary friend whom I could talk to about stuff I was going through and things I didn't understand. I talked to myself when I was out in public. Well, until I got caught doing it unknowingly by some people at school on the bus, matter of fact. Having siblings, but never growing up with any of them, did teach me how to be independent. But it didn't really feel good in the moment. Also, being one of the oldest, or the oldest, I didn't have anyone to bounce ideas off of or to ask advice from. Despite all of this, it did teach me the value of having family around in those really infrequent moments of like family reunions during the summer, church on Sundays, and definitely at holidays. So some of my fondest memories are during those times, and I really wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. I still hold tight to a lot of those. If you know me, I'm always at home for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. So I still enjoy being around family and my biologicals, during that time because it gives me a chance to connect with them. But college really is where I started to form my chosen family. Suddenly in college, I was in an environment where no one knew me. I did have a cousin that went to school with me, but we really ran in like completely different circles. Now we checked in on each other, every once in a while, but we did our own things, And around that time, I really had to figure out who Darius was. What made him tick? What pushed his buttons? And what made him anxious? And how he needed to overcome all of that, It turns out that Darius was an introvert navigating in an extrovert's world. Again, thank God for growth on that. I found my people in the marching band, in my major, and in my fraternity. These people are people who, we all had the same goals and we had the same enemies. And some of those enemies included our imposter syndrome, the boxes that our blood families put us in when we were at home. Like, oh, this is this type of person, or he's this type of person, or she's this type of person, or this is how she functions, he functions, etc. And also, one of our other biggest enemies were really some of our professors who acted like we had one class and one class only. It was then I knew that building these bridges of commonality with individuals would sustain me for years to come. And honestly, it definitely has to this day. The one thing I realized was that my connection with my chosen family had nothing to do with my sexuality at first. In fact, for the longest time, I was the dude who swore up and down, I'm not gay. And contrary to popular belief, I wasn't, at least not at that time. But then I started to meet other gay Black men. I got to know them. And then what I realized was I had to unlearn all that nonsense that I really had been raised around. I had been conditioned that when I was around my blood family, people who were gay weren't necessarily different, but they were people who you could poke fun at, who you could ridicule. And sometimes you could kind of turn your nose up to because either they weren't of God or that being gay really just made you funny. And I'm not talking about funny. I'm talking about the kind of funny where, old church ladies do that little hand gesture like this. Y'all know the one I'm talking about. Being around members of the LGBTQ plus community taught me tolerance, taught me acceptance, and it taught me to view others as MLK said, quote, by the content of their character, end quote. And really not by the color of their skin, nor, and I'm going to add this, the people that they are romantically or sexually attracted to. My chosen family has been there for me in ways my blood family just wouldn't understand. They provided me with not only mental and social support, but they also have been there to emotionally guide me through times that really are just kind of foreign to me. So as I've mentioned in this podcast, I'm not an emotional dude. I'm not that guy. All right. So when I go through some shit that I can't logic my way out of, my brain is usually like, ID, look, we need a system update, log off and reboot. But my chosen family connects with me in that way because they have shared experiences with me that I really wouldn't even dream of talking to my blood family about. They just get it. No need for long explanations. No need for disclaimers. They just get it. So to add a little bit more vulnerability to this Just Thoughts, I haven't been in many romantic relationships in my life at all. Okay. A lot of it is due to what I was talking about earlier about being the dark skin, chubby. I use the term chubby, but shit, I was fat. All right. So the dark skinned fat dude that was funny, but nobody was really interested in like that. And even though I was interested in them, it was like, oh, well, no, I just want to be friends, or no, all of that. But I will say in the romantic relationships that I've had, the 2.5 that I have been in, my chosen family really has been there to help me pick up the pieces after those dissolved. When my last relationship ended, and boy, that was a rough one. So if you want to hear more about that relationship, go back to Circling the Block, part 2. That episode, it was in season 2, last season. And if you want to get that tea, then go back and listen to that. So again, when my last relationship ended, my chosen family was really there to help me pick up the pieces. They didn't hit me with the, well, you just need to pray about it, or God will send you the right one. I mean, that's not some shit you really want to hear in the moment. They didn't say any of that. They were in the trenches with me. They passed me emotional tissues, and they even kept me from making bad decisions like texting my ex just to, quote, check in, even though, we weren't really talking like that. When I didn't understand what went wrong, they were there to listen. They offered consolation. And especially while my brain was doing that Control-Alt-Delete process that it does every time. I do kind of feel guilty though sometimes for not letting my blood family into the labyrinth that is my life. But more often than not, I'm really okay with it. You know, having my blood family know everything that's going on, I think would give me more undue stress and anxiety than I'm really willing to take. Listen, the way family gossips, and I'm sure that you all are familiar with this, I can already hear how it's going to go. Hey, how's Darius doing? Have you talked to him? Well, child, you already know what's going to happen when you hear that little cousin at the beginning of the sentence. And especially if a family member says that, you know what's getting ready to go down. So I guess it's like, I want my family to have this image of me that is safe, you know? I like to keep certain details to myself because frankly, my blood family doesn't always need access to the crunchy bits of my life. At least I don't feel like that. I'd like for them to have the polished kind of LinkedIn version of my life. I'm really not interested in them necessarily giving me advice about how I need to handle things. And I think a lot of that is a byproduct of the independence I gained early in life that I talked about a little bit earlier. But there are a few blood family members that I trust, like a handful. Maybe one hand, real talk. Even though my chosen family are people that I tend to go to most often when I need that comfort and that sounding board, there have been times where I've really had to let some of my chosen family go. You ever notice how people say, I can go weeks, months, even years without talking to somebody, and we just pick up right where we left off when we connect again? Or another one that I hear all the time is people come into your life for a season. And actually, we talked about that in a previous episode, the friendship episode, where we talked about people coming into someone's life for a season. So I'm going to say the same thing then. I'm going to double down on it. That same thing now that I said then. Yeah, I really don't believe in that at all. You know, I used to think friendship meant constant contact. But as I've gotten older, I realized that the older we get, the more that we shift, the more we change, and the more we grow. And with that shifting, changing, and growing, boundaries shift, change, grow, and are created. So while I feel like there shouldn't be a point where you or someone who you call your chosen family doesn't communicate for weeks, months, or even years, I've come to understand that really it's an after effect. The fact that you don't communicate is an after effect of a movement or a creation of boundaries. People coming into your life for a season, that's an after effect of a movement or creation of boundaries. So when I think about it that way, it really doesn't make me feel as bad. And I guess that's a good thing, right? Y'all will let me know in the comments. Sometimes that shift means certain friendships fade out, though. And, you know, I talked about Wi-Fi earlier, you know, their Wi-Fi connection, my chosen family. So sometimes that chosen family's Wi-Fi signal goes bad as well. But it is what it is when that happens. The boundaries that I have set for myself tend to assist me in keeping people compartmentalized. And while that may sound bad, I know how much I can share with someone and who I can share it with, you know? And that's made those connections between my blood family and my chosen family very clear and relatively healthy. And I think that is where I am at this space in my life. Like I just want clear and healthy relationships. So as I wrap these thoughts, I definitely want to shout out just a few of my chosen family members. So I'm about to drop some names here. And if I don't mention your name, just know that it's not a slight to you. It's just these are the people who are right now in my space and my environment, who have kind of been there with me for a while and offer me, you know, these extra things. But again, like I said, dropping names doesn't mean that people I don't name aren't on the list as well. So Jeff, who is my best friend and my podcast partner, who also puts up with me. I want to shout out my other best friend, Sean, who I know he gets tired of me like side-eyeing his spending habits every time I go visit. And I definitely have to shout out my girl, Anjali, who is my college ride or die. And she always really is there to give me that good kind of detoxing laugh. So if I've had a hard day, if I'm frustrated about something, if I need to just kind of talk through something, I can always call her and get that out, but then also have a good laugh about it at the same time. So to my other chosen family and my amazing blood family, you have been, and I'm going to use this term again, amazing forces in my life. And I want you to know that I love you. I appreciate you. And I wouldn't be the guy that I am today without your support and without your warm embrace. For those of you who may be struggling with family acceptance, be it blood family or chosen family, just know that you're not alone. All of us within this community at one point or another have had to deal with it in some form, some more intensely than others. Now, I've been one of the lucky ones to not have to deal with intense rejection from family. But again, it's because I understand who needs access to certain rooms in the temple of my life. And I know who needs tickets to the front few rows of the concert of my life. Just because your family story has not been ideal, and trust me, mine hasn't been either, it doesn't mean that your story can't be the GPS for someone else's life. And no matter what your family story has looked like so far, you get to decide how it's written moving forward. My hope, though, is that we can recognize these deficiencies in each other, and whether we reconcile and build with our blood family, or we build and cultivate anew with chosen family, that we can identify that community is what we need to enrich our further generations. So I greatly appreciate you all for listening to my just thoughts about blood family versus chosen family. Hopefully I will come to you soon with something else, or come back to you soon with something else that I have some thoughts about. Again, I want to thank y'all for listening, and until next time. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Now be sure to like, share, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and Spotify at Just Drawz. That's JUSTDRAWZ. Until next time,